All right, good evening, everyone. I'm here finally. It's your boy, the controversial counselor, David Lorenzo Glover, live in the counselor's corner. And tonight's topic is going to be about 10, 10 short stories that kind of impacted my life. Ebony Swanson, thanks for joining me tonight in the counselor's corner. So I'm going to focus on 10, 10 short stories. Um, hey, Ebony, Marcia, thanks for joining. Megan Schaefer, thanks for joining. Trevor, thanks for joining. Prophetess, thanks for joining. Sherry Woods, thanks for joining. Candace, Nika, thanks for joining. And what made me decide to do this? Well, I've talked about some of this in other platforms, but after having the discussion and thunderous altercations on Saturday, one of the points we we're talking about why relationships are so kind of complicated. We talked about the, people not getting over hurt and pain and letting that kind of dictate some of your, I don't want to say relationship goals, some of the outcomes in relationships. So I said, everybody has a story to tell, and everybody has went through some form of hurt and pain. But one of the things is, a lot of times we don't want to deal with it, and people like mask it or want to sweep it under the rug. And you're in relationships with people and they have no idea that certain things happened in your life, because many people have the mindset of, that was in the past. I'm only looking toward the future. They don't need to know any of this information. That's not necessarily correct. I think the more people know about you, the better they are as far as building a relationship. Cheryl Walker, thanks for joining me tonight. Chantrell Brown, thanks for joining me. And Nisi Carter Ellis, thanks for joining me tonight in the counselor's corner. So, typically with this, I'm a sensitive guy. I could be kind of come off a little hardcore, not so much hardcore, but just kind of, I don't know, I'm trying to think of the correct words. Kind of a hard person to get through or to read, because I keep, I keep my guards up. Don't trust too many individuals. So it's hard to get a good read as far as that. But some of the subject matter has made, I get sensitive talking about it and thinking about it, but I'm going to try to get through to it because I know it's Derek Hall. Thanks for joining me tonight. What's going on, D? Courtney, thanks for joining. And April Harrison Daniels, thanks for joining me tonight. So it's going to be like little short vignettes, but these was like kind of monumental things that kind of happened in my life growing up that kind of impacted me on the way I make decisions, maybe the way I behave, maybe the way I interact with people. And we all have these type of situations going on, maybe not every situation, but you have something going on that you kind of went through something growing up, and people will say, oh no, some people will say, oh, like they had the perfect life or whatever the case is, but we know that that's not always the case. Martha, good evening. Angela Smith, thanks for joining me tonight. Rhonda Watkins Washington, thanks for joining me tonight. So one of the first things, I'm going to try to get through this. I'm going to try to put my big boy drawers on and get through this. I should be fine. So one of the things that bothered me the most growing up was that my father was full of potential and had so much promise. He had a good job, wore nice clothes, always kept a nice vehicle, and had a wonderful family. But that was not enough. Hey, Angela. He fell to the victim of a lifestyle of a thug, where women, drugs were the only thing that mattered to him after a while. He did a good job of wearing a mask in the lifestyle he had fallen into, but eventually crashed and burned. And that's what makes my heart tick faster and motivates me to do better. Because of the pain that he went through, because he went through some pain too, where his father didn't claim him. He told my grandmother he is too dark to be my son. So therefore, I think my father always had that edge about him. And then once my grandmother passed away, it kind of took his toll, and he kind of lost control, where he, would indulge in the drugs. And there was times that, I'm being transparent. There was times my mother would be working 3 to 11. A couple of his buddies would be over, and they'd be in the bathroom shooting up. At the time when I was younger, I didn't know what they were doing in the bathroom. Me and my brothers thought, like, man, we were sitting around like, why in the bathroom so long? I gotta pee. We gotta use the bathroom. We knock on the door. We gotta use the bathroom. We're like, I'll be out. Then, when you see a couple of his buddies out in the bathroom, we started thinking like, man, is they gay? Are they gay? 3 dudes in the bathroom, but they were doing some other things that we didn't understand at the time. But I think he masked his hurt and pain by using drugs, and it kind of took a toll, and it kind of changed the person that he was. Because me growing up, he became envious of the relationship I had with my mother. By me being the first child, he kind of took things out on me, and he used to always say, that my mother and my grandmother, they was gonna make me a punk. He used other words to me when I got older. I'm going to be a pussy, excuse my French. That's how it was. I cuss on here. So stuff like that. But I think he was going through a lot of hurt and just didn't know how to get it out there. That's what they did, him and his buddies. And it got to the point that he lost his good job. Like growing up, when people would see me, they knew that I was his child, and they would say stuff. Oh man, your father, oh, he's so smart. He's like a genius. And the thing is, him and his brothers, they all had that. They were intelligent, but I think my father turned out each and every one of them to drugs. So my uncle started using drugs as well. So they got it bad. And I always said to myself, there's no way that I can be that type of leader to my brother and sister. So I worked hard to make sure I didn't indulge in that type of stuff. Now, don't get me wrong. I drank, whatever. My 16th birthday, first time really having a drink, and did it. But we did it more so when we was going to a party setting, for me to feel a little more comfortable, to be a little more outspoken. But I would never let it do anything to dictate my future. And that's what my father did. He worked at Airco Carbon, was young, could have been a foreman. I think he worked there. My grandfather worked there. Everything was in place for him to do well. But he let drugs and stuff get the best of him, and anger and probably resentment toward his father not being involved. And it was kind of like the vicious cycle. He kind of took that out on me, with me being the oldest. So that was one situation. Now, I'm not going to get into all the details. It's just something to let you know that sooner or later, when you went through something, you got to be able to open up and be able to share and talk about it, because you don't want this unresolved anger and pain to be sitting in the core of your heart for all of your life, because eventually you're going to stress the hell out. You're going to get stressed the hell out. So I'm, in that process, I've been doing it the last 2-3 years, start talking about it even when I came out with my book, Cocktail Conversations, by the controversial counselor. I kind of talked about it in my introduction. I want to thank Angela for helping me put that stuff together, the introduction. So, that was big. I truly appreciated that information for me to be able to share that with someone who I felt was organized, responsible, professional, that could help me put this stuff on paper when I never really put it all together. It was always different pieces that I used, but never just going back, putting everything together. Eddie Porter, what's going on, Fast? Thanks for joining me tonight. Mary Heisen, thanks for joining me. And Charlene Alexander, thanks for joining me. So back to my father. My father never knew that his addiction would cause so much pain in so many people's lives. It caused my mother to deal with 4 children by herself on a limited income. All I can say is thank God for my grandparents and aunts. Because of them and the support they provided, my mother was able to survive and raise the 4 of us. Otherwise, she would have been headed down a dead-end street with no way out. Because you can imagine, with 4 children, you're working full time, maybe getting some social service benefits, some food stamps. But the way North Avenue was set up, you had to be able to have what everybody else had. Angela said, it was my pleasure. So proud of you for sharing your truth. It's all good. Thank you for your assistance. So again, growing up on North Avenue, and anybody on North Avenue come in, we were hard. We were critical. That's why I always say North Avenue was one of the roughest streets in America. The hell with Compton and all of that stuff. Well, we wasn't gangbangers like that, but it was hard growing up there. Like if you had any weakness, people would exploit it, and you had to be tough because there was a lot of boys. We had boys that were like sections of it, and it was like different little sections, and sometimes we all come together, and you had to be tough to be able to survive that. And if you didn't have anything, and if you were lacking anything, you got picked on. And I'll share some of that stuff. You got picked on. But once I realized and I got comfortable with myself, the people that got picked on, I kind of took it upon myself to take them under my wings because I know what it felt like to being picked on all the time. So I never tolerated that. Lindsay, thanks for joining me tonight. Reverend Charles, thanks for joining me tonight. Good evening, my good brother. So if you can imagine, so my mother, we had my grandparents, and then at the time my aunts didn't have any children, and they helped her out a great deal. Other than that, I don't know what would have happened. We got through, but they made it easier. They made sure, to the point that other people on our streets thought we were rich. And we were like, rich? Yeah, right. They was like, oh, y'all got all these cars. No, actually, my mother didn't have a car. My grandfather had a car, and my aunts and them still stayed at the house. And, they all had newer vehicles. So it looked like we had it going on, but we knew the internal struggles. Stephanie Daniels, thanks for joining me tonight. So, that was like a big part of it too. That was number 2. Now, again, back on North Avenue, I call it the greatest street in history. My grandparents' house was my sanctuary. It brought me so much love and peace. Thank God we grew up living right next door to my grandparents because it saved me during so many painful times. Thank you, Bay. That's what I call my grandmother, or we called her, and Granddaddy, because without you, I would not be who I am today. Love you with all I got. So, again, I'm trying not to get emotional on this. Because they live right next door to us, it was a tremendous help. Not everybody's fortunate to have that. And, man, we were lucky. That's all I can say. We were lucky to have them because I never heard it for anything. Physically, Emotionally, I did, but once my grandmother found out, all right, Charles and Miss Huggins was a great one. All right, let me get it together. So once my grandmother found out, she kind of took control, and I was okay from that point. Yeah, bear with me. Told you sometimes this stuff is tough, and no matter how many times you talk about it, got to get out. All right, I'm good. So, I can remember the image just like it was yesterday. Me hiding out in my grandmother's bathroom, trying to drown out my father yelling from outside the window, calling me all kinds of names. Because I had a fear of riding. I don't know. The bike was big to me. He called it Dream Machine. It's like a 27-inch, 10 speed, and I wasn't ready to ride it. I wasn't ready. I was like 8 or 9, but every time he would pull it out, like some of the boys on the street, they would be like, "Mr. David, can I ride your bike? Can I ride your bike?" And they would ride it, but I didn't want to ride it. I wasn't ready. So I would go to my grandmother's in her bathroom and hide out. The Angie say, "It's okay, show emotions. It's a sign of strength." So I would go in there, hide out. Then one day, my grandmother, I was in there, I guess, longer than normal. So she, being herself, being her nosy self, but it was a good nosy, she kind of heard my father's voice through the door. And she went out there and kind of let him have it. And he was like, we baby me too much. And he didn't want his son to grow up being a punk. Well, she kind of ripped him a new one and told him, I don't have to ride that damn bike. If he wants somebody to ride it, he ride it. She was like, I can ride it when I get ready to. So they went kind of back and forth. But he ended up caving in, and he kind of left me alone from that point. All right. I'm going to be all right. I'm going to get it together. All right. So, and it's more to that, but I guess for me, because my grandmother, she was like probably one of my first heroes. I'm still gonna get through this. So she was one of my first heroes. So ultimately, I always say, I probably couldn't have made it to this point without her. But, and I'm just saying, you know, no matter how many times you think about this stuff, it's tough. And man, I ain't want to break down, and I understand tears, you know, show your strength, but I just each time I want to be able to go through it to a point that I could breeze through it. And man, like I said, it's a lot of us that have this pain inside, but we try to act macho and carry on, and then it comes out in relationships where you have some guys that's abusive or overly abusive, and they don't know how to show anybody love because they're guarded or they're angry because they never had a chance to release any of this. So we are a work in progress. Like when people say, "Oh, you're an expert," hell no, I'm not no expert. I just know that this stuff has to be spoken on. It has to be. And I'm not talking about spoken on in a format even when people talk about it, in church, because usually you go in there and listen, but we need to have other platforms, face-to-face dialogues or something like that, that you can, the social media, that you can have an opportunity to get stuff off your chest and have adult conversations. Angie said, "Love you, my friend. Love you too." Lindsay said, "Real men show emotions." That's what I hear. Christina said, "Take your time." I'm trying to come back around. It's okay to cry. It's not going to make you no less than a man. Yeah, I figure that much now, but I'm going to be ready to roll. All right, so we'll move on to the next point. Carl Covinghouse, thanks for joining. Muhammad, Ivan, thanks for joining. So I remember growing up playing sports, was really passionate about it. Despite my father's battle with his drug addiction and his mental abusive behavior, I still wanted him to be proud of me and support me by coming to the games, giving me a pat on my back or a high five, or hey, just being there. All my years of sports, I only can recall him maybe coming to maybe one game. I guess that's better than none. Fathers, I know we work and do a lot of things, but please make sure we support our children as much as possible. Trust me, our children are looking for us in the stands. And I know some of us, it's hard to make every game due to the demands of our jobs, or sometimes you just need to work overtime because you got to get things paid, and some things have to fall short. It's whether you miss a couple games, but you know that work is, you're getting work done or you're getting paid extra, that everything's intact. And sometimes it's just tough, but that wasn't his situation. I think a lot of it was just he checked out. He checked out. He had rather been somewhere else doing something else. And that was because he went through pain. Now, luckily, I seen him live it, that I try to be better than that and to experience the things that I may go through. I mean, it's all, it's all a battle, but I have dedicated my life to try to help other people get over pain, but at the same time, we are helping each other. And I tell my students that every time, like sometimes y'all give me strength and I don't even know it. Marcia said, "Never let anyone tell you it's not all right to show tears," because believe it or not, It frees you and allows you to show empathy towards others and who have had similar childhood experiences. And that's so true. So true. And that's a progress. I mean, believe it or not, I haven't really relayed this information only a few times. So a couple times it was like on one of my shows, and my brother actually interviewed me, but it was just audio. You could just hear my voice. So I was able to take deep breaths and be able to get through it. And then got interviewed by Teresa Holmes, and she has the bounce back movement where people with stories to tell and overcoming situations. And I was able to get through it there. But then my girl, Nisi Carter Ellis, has her attitude that's coming up, and I'll be pumping that in the next, throughout from here on out, talking about that in Niagara Falls, the attitude, where she decided to have some guest speakers. I was one of them. And so this was probably in front of a room of about 100 people and sharing my testimony. And I kind of broke down. So really, with me, you seeing me face to face, this really is probably like my second time. So it'll get better each time. And even I'm seeing strength in it right now, because last time luckily we was running out of time. I don't even think I could even made it to this point. But I'm coming along. That's all I could say. So also growing up, again, I told you North Avenue was tough. It was tough. But when I was growing up, being dark-skinned appeared to be a curse. I was called Dark Vader, Blackie, Tar Baby, and whatever else. I was also ridiculed because of my birthmark on my head. Even to this day, if I don't have on a hat, you get these looks. Like, okay, what is that? And I understand when children ask, because they're kids, and they may ask, what happened, Mr. Glover? Did you get hurt or whatever? So I'm sure y'all seen it, pictures, here's my birthmark right here. And I kind of always, before I used to kind of try to mask it by wearing a hat. So then once I started trying to, come up with my own brand and identity, it became like a signature thing. But at first it was kind of just to hide my birthmark, but I really couldn't hide it because, growing up in school, couldn't wear a hat in school. But I used to have more hair on my head, but my hairline used to always grow crooked. So I used to get a lot of ridicule growing up based on that. I mean, this birthmark was every little thing they could think of. That's how they would attack that. And again, people look for weaknesses and they attack. So growing up, that's what they would attack. So a lot of times no one would know. A lot of times I spent time at nighttime, because during the day we was always busy doing something, unlike the kids of today who spend most of the time on games and don't go outside. We got dressed, we went outside. We only came in the house to eat, really, and we was back out and didn't want to come in when it was time to come in. But those times where you finally settle in after, being kind of teased and picked on throughout the day, I shed a lot of tears. So when I was able to kind of come back and defend or was witty and crack jokes, I ain't taking no shorts. Like I just like no, and that's part of all of this, that I don't let nobody. If you're gonna come for me, I'm gonna bring that smoke. I'm gonna give you all the smoke, and it's because of this. So when you say, man, David came back hard, that's just who I am. It doesn't make it right, but that's just who I am. That I've took enough, and I don't take no more. I'm not taking no more. So. But now I have filters to understand, like, oh, I might have went overboard with this one. But before, when I got to be a teenager and started getting bigger and stuff like that, you had to come correct, or I was going to give you the business back. So again, I wear the hat and I would get like ridiculous questions such as, is that a metal plate in your head? No wonder growing up, I asked myself 1,000 times, why me? But now I'm a grown ass man who knows my value and see my color as a strength and my birthmark as a unique feature, which makes me stand out. Those days of doubting myself are long gone. Thank God. All right, moving along. So, of course, I was left with mental scars growing up, and I struggled with someone when someone entered my personal space or comfort zone. I like to be in control of situations. When I can't, I feel that someone is taking something away from me. That might be a part of being a Gemini too, but I look at it as I had other reasons, but I think the Gemini thing that could play a role in that too. So at one point in my life, I struggled with this. Anyone that was confrontational or threatening to me, it usually led to an altercation, a thunderous altercation back in those days. I was losing control of my emotions and I was headed down the wrong road. Three fist fights in a short span made me recognize that I was starting to emulate my father's mentality. That was out of my character and not how I was raised by my mother and grandparents. So that was like kind of like in my junior junior year in college that this stuff started coming out. And trust me, I didn't want it to go down like that, but it kind of, that's just the way the chips had fell. All right. That's why you wear hats. Be proud of your birthmark. Yeah, I understand that. Yeah. And, sometimes I can, like I said, I still get the looks and I still get, questions, but, I'm better. The hat just became my signature thing now. Actually, I like buying hats. I like wearing them. And it's more so because my father was a hat guy. He didn't have a birthmark, and my grandfather was. So I think it was something also passed down that I also enjoy. It's a part of them. Remember, I went bald in the fourth grade, so I feel your pain, man. So I know you had to feel it, Reverend Charles, in the fourth grade going bald. That had to be tough. C-Ball, thanks for joining me tonight in the Counselor's Corner. So one of the things also, I don't know why, out of all of them, I can't find this one. Let's see. Bear with me. Trying to have all my points together. All right, here we go. So also, had some mishaps. Again, North Avenue was tough. It was a lot going on. But then also you had a sexual perpetrator on that street that was crazy in itself. And let me just read you this short tidbit. I felt a lot of anger toward these acts. When the person was doing this, all he thought about was his own selfish needs. Not once did he take into consideration that he was taking advantage of a child that was much younger than him. Nor was he considering the possibility of how he could be ruining some child's life behind his own personal gratification. It bothered me that someone was trying to control me mentally and physically. So I went through that spell with a neighbor of ours, and me and this other guy. And I see his sisters on social media and stuff, but I don't even know if he ever talked about it or came to terms with it. Vonda Purnell, thanks for joining me tonight. C-Ball, what's going on, brother? And, I didn't really, I tried to talk about it growing up, but even mentioning it to my younger siblings, I never could get it out because I always felt like they would laugh. And then remember when I spoke on having those like 3 fights in that one year, like in my junior year in college, that's when I came out and kind of broke down and told my mother. Well, I didn't want to tell anybody this was going on because, again, despite it all with my father, if I would have told him, it would have landed him in jail probably for life. If I'd have told my grandmother, she certainly would have went after her. If I'd have told any of my aunts. See, my mother was more passive, but my aunts, they I could easily see him being stabbed up. So I didn't want to lose any of them. So I kind of just made do, and I kept busy. And that's what got me through it. Just being busy, just doing stuff. Like I said, we had to have a creative imagination. We played sports, we rode bikes. I kept busy. In school, I got good grades. I played sports growing up, so I just stayed busy. Doesn't mean I still wasn't suffering inside, but only time I really thought about it was at nighttime. And granted, he still was walking around. He should have been probably deep under a jail. But I said, as I got older, I said to myself, look at his life. He's dying inside mentally. So I never really said anything. And I remember sharing it with one of my buddies, and he was like, and I got upset. And he was like, yo, we can handle it. Because he didn't like to see me break down. He was prepared. He wanted us to go find him. And he went and got had a little heat. And he was like, yo, we could go find him right now. And I was like, it's not going to change anything. And I was like, I'm not going out like that. So I kind of killed that notion. But that, that's just, some of the things that you go through. Kimberly said, and the old people would look out for us kids. And back then they watched all of our kids. Yeah, we had that type of thing, but somehow he broke through the cracks. He broke through the cracks and was able to kind of exploit myself and this other young man. And I still see him from time to time. Even when we got older, he still came by the house. He was still over there, but I didn't tell anybody, or I just didn't want, I felt like he was already suffering, and I just let it be. Nicole Isom, thanks for joining me tonight. Zilla, thanks for joining me, one of my fellow BCPS county counselors. Martha says, sometimes you reap what you sow. Yeah, so he definitely reaped it, and he's probably struggling to this day, but I don't got time to be worried about that. I have to keep it moving. So that was kind of that stage. Now, damn, time fly by. It's 10:12. What time I said it was? 10:30. So I still got time. I thought I started at 9. All right. So now, moved past that, got to college, and all of a sudden, well, part of it is I got misadvised at one semester, but now I start facing adversity in college, because throughout elementary, from the 3rd grade on, I did well in school. Well, I'll share this story, which I've shared this before, but like when I was in the 2nd grade, 2nd grade, I didn't really talk too much in school. I didn't say anything. So my mother had a parent-teacher conference with my 2nd grade teacher, and she suggested that I be placed in special education because I don't talk. And my mother was like, oh, trust me, he talks. And he ain't no dummy. He's smart. He's smart. You just got to pull it out of him. You got to ask him questions because he's quiet. So she told me that if I don't start saying anything, that the teacher is going to start asking me questions. And if I don't answer, they're going to put me in smaller classes, or I would have to ride the little yellow bus. So I went to school the next day. She came in, oh, good morning, class, good morning. And the first thing I said was, good morning, Mrs. Crabapple. And she kind of was like shocked, like, he said something. So I think she called my mother and was like, typically she'd have been upset, but she was so happy that it was a breakthrough that I said something that she couldn't even get upset. So then from that point forward, I started participating um, in school and stuff. So after that, things was kind of easy for school. I mean, I always kept an 85 to 100 average. Roger, thanks for joining me tonight. Amber, thanks for joining me. So, but then in college, I started facing some adversity because you got to think about it. Even though I was only 5-10 minutes away from the house, I was on campus, New Independence, uh, different, females, able to, drink, go to parties, and no one really monitoring you. My grades slipped. They slipped big time. Actually, most of our grades, the people that came in with me, and some of them got academically dismissed. I was just barely hanging on. I went to a Jesuit school, not university, where it was, Catholic. And when you were placed on probation, you had to go meet with one of the priests guys. So I had to go meet with him because I was on probation, and he kind of asked me what was my schedule like and what are some of the activities I did after. Kind of went over what they call the standard of academic progress and was saying I had to get my grades up here or I could face dismissal. He said, David, painful childhood experiences can be used as stepping stones, which motivate us to strive to become all we can be as we transition from childhood to becoming an adult. Oh, no question about it. No question about it. So I was in danger of being academically dismissed. So, we call these courageous conversations. We all have to face them one day or another. Mine's happened in college when I was being on the brink of being academically dismissed from our university. I was not working up to my potential and did a poor job balancing my academic life with my social life, and my grades suffered. During my evaluation meeting, my academic advisor, Anthony Miller, wrote me a new one. So bad, and reminded me how my friends who I started college with are no longer there. And I'm not being a good example. He said I was not being a good example for my brother and sister, and how much disappointment I would cause my mother and grandmother to know that I went to college. And plus, he spoke so highly of me as well. Frederick, the master barber, what's going on, brother? Thanks for joining me tonight. So after I had this meeting, and you got to understand, in the meeting, they were asking me questions. Do you want to be here? I'm like, yeah. Why do you want to be here? Because I do. And I was real short and real curt with them, and really wasn't giving them anything. So he pulled me into his office afterwards, and he let me have it. And yeah, I know I cuss on here, so I give it to you like he said. And y'all like, administrator said that at your school? Yeah, because he also was a family member too. He had children. My cousins is his. Couple of my cousins is his children. He had kids by my cousin, so I always knew him since I was little. So he kind of like, what the fuck is your problem, David? Like, oh, you gonna get in and act like you cool? You gonna be just like the rest of them? You want to be like a crackhead or something on Highland Avenue? And he just went in, and I really couldn't say too much. And he was like, pretty much, I don't have shit else to say to you. So I went to my room, and I kind of, I started crying, and I thought about it, and I was like, damn, I'm blowing it. So I came back, and I started, going to the library more, start doing away with all the social stuff and got focused. Then I remember one time I, start finding some success, had some good grades, would bring it to him, like my test scores or paper scores. And he was like, man, what the hell are you bringing this for me? I don't need to see this. I already knew you could do this. And he was right. So he's one of the most instrumental people also in my life. Tony Miller, that's my man. And every time I see him, we reminisce, and he talk about how proud he is, and we go through and we talk about these same. Took me under his wing, and everybody needs somebody that you could take under your wing, or hopefully took you under your wing, because we can't do this stuff alone. It's too much going on that it's hard to travel these paths alone. Donna E. Lewis, thanks for joining me tonight, and Gail Price, thanks for joining me. So Tony, I owe him much gratitude for kind of putting me in place when I needed it, and he did, and man, he helped me out a lot, and I'm always going to be grateful for that. So, and finally, one of the things, and this is only a small bit because we could talk about this stuff forever, but these are just like some of the monumental meetings. And then I remember getting my first job after graduating from college, and I was a social worker for Family and Children's Services, and it was like it was called a runaway program social worker, and I dealt with kids that ran away in Niagara County that were kind of displaced, and we would have to kind of find them, either link them up with a family member, or they had what they called safe houses or hostage families. I forgot the names that they used, but we had a couple of them in Niagara County, and that we would place the kids there, and then we would like transport them to school and pick them up, and the ultimate goal was to try to get them to go back home or to get hooked up with a family member. So memories of my first job after graduating from Niagara University with my bachelor's in social science. Rachel Cooper, thanks for joining me tonight. I completed my requirements in December 1992, and I was hired by Family and Children's Services as a runaway program social worker. In February 1993. But one of the things that happened was I was working with a Caucasian female who ran away, and I had to transport her back and forth to school. When her dad found out that I was a young Black man, suddenly things changed. He was calling the agency, throwing a rant, wondering why a Black man was transporting his daughter alone, and how he would sue the agency if she was not taken off my caseload. So what happened with that is he called one time, called my number. He was yelling and screaming and just going in, asking how old I was and who the hell do I think I am, transporting his child around. So I had supervision with my boss, and I told her, and she was like, David, do never let anybody talk to you like that. You can always say until he calms down, you're going to terminate this call. And unless he calls back with a different frame of mind, then you'll speak to him. Or I could have passed her on, or say you can speak to my supervisor. Remember, I'm raw. I'm new. I'm 23 years old in this position, and I'm telling grown people that's 40-something how to run their lives with their children. And I didn't have any children at the time. So it would seem like kind of like an oxymoron. Like people like, how the hell, what can you actually offer us? So she made it seem like she had my back. But then when my probation period ended, they ended up letting me go. So now I once was so proud, able to help my mother out with my siblings, because they were still in high school or in college, was able to kind of, make sure they had stuff for college to go back for the week with, whether it was snacks, some pocket money or something. And all of a sudden I have to come home and tell my mother, because she would always ask about my cases and stuff like that, what happened today, anything exciting. And then I had to tell her that I had lost my job. So the hard thing about that was no later than them telling me I didn't make my probation, maybe like 10 minutes later in the hallway where they had the one ads, the help wanted positions, the postings for jobs, my position was already posted. How insensitive, but I dealt with it. It was another older black guy that kind of, he was the truth. I'm not going to say his, well, I'll say his name. He passed away, Michael Brundage. So he was very instrumental in us growing up in the community, whether he was the director of the community center, he was one that would do job training with us. And when I was younger, so now I'm older and I'm working with him, and he was like my go-to guy. Like when I had issues or had questions, I would come talk to him about it. And it was like little basic stuff, like my coworker would say, "Why do you come to work all dressed up? You're making me look bad." Because back in those days, that's when women wore stirrup pants and she would wear a sweater, and it was the same little 2-3 outfits. But I was told by Michael would come in there with suits on, and I had another mentor, I think Marvin Wilson, had told me, no matter what, young brother, when you get paid, make sure you buy your shirt. You ain't got to buy the whole outfit because you're probably not making that much. You buy your shirt, here, maybe a tie, some pants, some shoes. You get everything together and you start building up your wardrobe, and you come to work looking decent. He said, because they expect you not to. So I took that, I took it personal. So I would dress up. And shout out to Felicia Davis, who worked at Van Eusen's, who would give me get her discount, and I would get paid, and I would like, listen, when do you work? I need to come out there and get some items. So I stayed, and what's crazy, I still got some of those ties from back then. I'm just a little pack rat, won't throw stuff away, but I still got ties from back then. But the key thing that Michael said during that thing is they had let me go, and it was still a couple more weeks that I was going to work. And I still came to work dressed up. I still came on time, still stayed the whole day. And one day he pulled me in and he was like, yo, man, he was like, you like 23, 24. He said, man, you cut from a different cloth, man. He said, because there's no way in hell that somebody let me go from a job, have a posting up, being insensitive, and you still come to work dressed up, come on time, stay to the end. He said, I would have turned this whole place inside out. The files would have been jacked up and everything. But even then, I always thought, like, it's not gonna change anything. And by doing that, I could be, kind of destroying some other kid's progress. So I just came in and did my time and ended up leaving there. And it took a while to get another job because I graduated in December, 92 actually, but walked in May of 93. And I had that job in February of 93. So in less than 2 months, I had already got a full-time job with benefits. Was it making the most back then? I still remember $16,000 a year. That was my salary, but I didn't have any kids or anything, so I was all right. So those are some of the kind of things that stood out, and it's a lot more, but I just wanted to kind of go over those points. And for anybody, we all have our shortcomings, our pain that we go through. We gotta talk about it. We gotta get it out. You gotta share this with your partners, share this with siblings, and close friends, and you got to be able to talk about your pain, whatever, and that's what kind of gets us through. At least you got a decent notice. Yeah, I could have walked out, but that still doesn't cut it for me a decent notice. I mean, I know some people get noticed and they get walked out like that, but again, that was a job with a lot of documentation and different stuff like that, that they wanted to make sure that everything was on point for the next person. But I bounced back, and I'm okay. So again, make sure you sharing this. Share this video. I don't care if people see it. I know at the beginning of it, I kind of broke down and it was tough, but I said to myself, no matter what, I was going to try to get through it. I got through it. It'll get better each time. Sooner or later, I'll be telling this and it'll be like easy work. But it was just something that I just wanted to share. And I felt like when you talk about hurt and pain, we have to think about situations in our life that caused us painful situations. Marcia said, when you have compassion for something you love to do, most of the time you won't allow anyone to steal your joy. You keep on the grind and push through no matter what. I applaud you. Thank you. Thank you. And Martha said, good night as well, Martha. So with that being said, I'm going to, Nicole said, thanks for sharing. Very strong, man. No problem, Nicole. Thanks, sister. I appreciate you. So I'm going to get ready to close it out. Share it. Like I always say, just keep sharing it. This is how stuff get around. We got to get in a better habit of sharing stuff that could be beneficial instead of sharing stupid videos or stuff that that has no relevance with you, but you look and you see it's been shared 500,000 times. And I'm just asking for everybody who tune in to share it. It's not going to hurt you, because somebody else, this message could mean the world to. I'll probably turn around and have a watch party on this right after. So I'll be, with that feature, it gives me a chance to kind of look at myself and say, wow, I don't know if I want to see myself break down like that, but I'm willing to do it, check it out, because I got through it. So that's the most important thing. So with that said, I'm out. I appreciate you all listening to, such a small segment of my story, but such a powerful time. 10 powerful times in my life that kind of helped shape and mold me to who I am today. So nothing else but to try to keep moving on forward. So with that said, Terry Buckles, you're joining late. Check me out next time. Rewatch the video over again. We'll have a watch party shortly after for people who didn't get a chance to check it out, and feel free to comment and just keep it moving. And again, thanks everybody. And, I'll be back in the Counselor's Corner in a couple days, and had another long weekend. So it's time to get ready back for that grind again. School thing tomorrow. So I appreciate you all, and everybody have a good night. And remember what I said, just make sure that you talk to folks and release some of that hidden pain that you have inside, and it'll make you feel better. I'm telling you, it'll definitely make you feel better. It was very insightful and quite emotional, but you did it. Yeah, I did do it. So I'm out. Thank you all again. Peace.